What's going on, everybody? Man, Eric Wilson in for the Sports Arena, and it is a somber Tuesday, if you will, because as we all know, the Philadelphia Eagles unfortunately lost to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the wild card matchup, and I can't even say it was a game because as someone who was actually at Raymond James Stadium and I was sitting up there in the nosebleeds, as I watched my team on that field, I can tell you right now that by the second quarter, I felt as though I knew how this game was going to end. And I wasn't the only one. So as you know, I had a conversation with this gentleman last week, just talking about the playoffs, talking about wild card weekend, talking about the teams. And he and I both said that this game could come down to a field goal. Well, it definitely did not come down to that. But let me get in. The editor and CEO of Amped Up Sports, Mr. Leo Haggerty, is back with me here on the Sports Arena. Sir, I would say good afternoon, but ain't nothing good about today, especially as us as Eagle fans. So we ain't even going to waste no time. We're going to jump right into this. Leo, let me simply ask you, what in the blue hell went wrong last night?
Well, we're wearing black for a reason, he will, and we are in mourning. And here's what drove me nuts. I said this game will be determined by the weather. Here's why. If it rained, the Eagles would be forced to run the ball, which is what they do the best. And the Buccaneers, they would have to run the ball, which is what they don't do best. And I said, if it doesn't rain, well, look out. The Buccaneers, they can throw the football, And what drove me nuts is that the Eagles come out, first play, 8 yards on the ground. Second play, 4 yards on the ground. 12 straight passes after that, and nothing's going right. It drove me nuts that they overcoached this thing. The Eagles coaches figured, okay, we came in there and did 200-plus yards rushing. They're going to load the box. So what? You got the best offensive line in the league. Run the football. They feel, okay, we're going to have to throw it because we're not going to be able to run it if they put 6, 7, 8 in the box. Well, guess what? You can. Just got to go at it. And then when they went empty, Eric, here comes the blitz, and it's coming hard. They're bringing 6 guys, and there's only 5 to block. It was a metamorphosis of what happened in week 3. A totally different team, uninspired, unenthused. And I'll tell you what, that defense is in shambles.
Yeah.
They're playing with guys I've never even – it's like in Major League. The guy, hey, who's that guy? Well, that's what it is. Their linebacking core, I think I was the next guy to suit up. So it was kind of crazy.
Listen, if it wasn't you, it was me coming down from the cheap seats and the nosebleeds because I was like, what is going on here? And listen, I went in with moderate expectations. I went in and I was looking and I'm saying to myself, okay, this is a game that we as Philadelphia Eagles fans were happy to get because we knew we had seen this team at least once before and we had the formula for beating them. We truly did. But nowhere in what we saw last night was that executed. I mean, Leo, I saw the middle of the field open numerous times for any one of our offensive weapons to simply run a simple slant route and get 15 yards. But it was too much of jet sweeps or moving to the left or moving to the right. Something very interesting that I actually, because I did do a little bit of homework after this game because I was just so enamored. I was like, I'm not going to sit here and listen to everybody talk about it. Listen, Leo, I've had people call my phone today that I haven't heard from in months asking me, what was your team doing last night? And I wanted to sit there and I said to myself, don't fall for it. Don't fall for the trap. Don't fall for the banana in the tailpipe. I said, you know what? I'm going to talk to someone who understands my pain first before I talk to the rest of the world. So thank you for this. But I was just looking at our team last night and I said to myself, I knew by the second quarter, I knew by the second quarter where this game was headed when the Bucks were running from where I was sitting. They were running trips right, and it looked as though Philly just wanted to run a simple zone or maybe a cover two. And I'm like, why is our defense? Do we not see what's happening here? Like, are we not understanding the basic fundamentals of football? Like, it just seemed like all of that was lost. And from that point on, I was like, okay, I'm praying at this point, hoping that the second half was going to be different, but it was more of the same. And by the fourth quarter, for the first time in a very long time, I left Raymond James with about 3 minutes left in the fourth quarter because I knew it was over. I knew it was done. I was like, you know what? I had to walk out of there because if I didn't, it was one of those things where the Philly guy in me would have came out. Someone would have said something the wrong way. I have learned through people such as yourselves and others, sometimes it's best to just walk away from a situation that could get very ugly very fast. Because Tampa and all, they're right. And you know what? Tampa Bay fans, congratulations. You know, someone had to come out of the NFC South. It was Baker Mayfield. It was Mike Evans. It was Chris Godwin. It was Kate Otten. It was your team. Now you're moving forward. I wish you the best of luck. But for Philadelphia, man, so many questions that all need to be answered. And truly, in my opinion, Leo, it starts from the top down. So that's what I want to ask you. Who do you feel is first on the chopping block to no longer be affiliated with this team?
Here's how I think that plays out.
Okay.
I think Jeffrey Lurie goes to Nick Sirianni and say, who's leaving? And if Sirianni says nobody, I think Jeffrey Lurie says, well, you're leaving. And somebody's going to have to fall on their sword for last night.
Right.
I think what Sirianni's going to do is he's going to demote people and try to find an offensive and a defensive coordinator. Now, Matt Patricia, I felt sorry for him because I don't care what you run. And you know what scared me, Eric? When I watched the Buffalo game, and all of a sudden Buffalo had two linebackers go down, and all Pittsburgh did was throw 6-yard passes and let the yak begin. And that's what we saw last night. They just hit people and they let them run because these guys, again, they were on the street 6 weeks, 5 weeks, some of them 2 weeks ago. And now you're starting in a daggone NFL playoff game? Yeah, I think Sirianni is on the block, especially after what happened to the Cowboys. And because you got Pete Carroll and Bill Belichick and Jim Harbaugh hanging over your head right now, like that sword from in Greek mythology.
Yeah.
That sword hanging from a thread. If I'm Jeffrey Lurie, I'm looking at those guys and saying, hey, can we step it up? But here's what bothered me the most with this. Can anybody do math on the Eagles coaching staff? Why in God's name did they go for 2? Okay, this is simple. You kick the extra point, you're down 16-10. You're down 2 field goals, you're down a touchdown, extra points, you got the lead. If you go for 2, you're still down 5. You need 2 field goals, you need a touchdown, and that gets you there. But because you don't get the 2, the touchdown, the extra point only gets you a tie, and 2 field goals don't get you a tie.
Right.
Did somebody call down to Sirianni and say, hey, why are we doing this? Take a timeout, back off there, big boy, because this doesn't make sense. It's all about risk reward, and the risk totally outweighed the reward.
Well, that's because 92% of the time, when it's on the goal line or it's 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, the brotherly shove has worked 92% of the time. Last night was the 8% where it didn't work. And I still go back and I watch that because I believe I believe Jalen got in. I believe he got in, but you know what? The ref's call is final. They looked at it and they made the decision. It is what it is. But I did feel like you, like, why would we not just go for the extra? Just go for the simple, make it a 10, make it a 6-point game, and
Yeah.
keep it moving. No, let's go for 5. All right, I understood the reasoning behind it, but it is, you know, the AWS or the ESPN analytics or just the analytics in general, the probability of it working 90%. We're going to take those odds more times than not. This just happened to be one of those times where it didn't happen. So let me ask you this question. Everybody's talking about everybody from the top down, except one name that I have not heard. And it's a name that I personally have been I've kind of backed off a little bit over the last few years because I felt as though he was moving in the right direction. But what percentage do you feel of this blame belongs to Howie Roseman? And I ask that question because players that we have either released or traded away versus players that we have kept does not really vibe with me. And the one name that I heard most people talk about to me today, to those who I was willing to talk to about, was Bradbury. It was like we let go of CJ Gardner-Johnson, who now is in Detroit, who isn't going to play another home playoff game, versus James Bradbury IV. And I'm like, I looked at that and I asked myself, even when it went down, I was like, there has to be an underlying reason because CJ Gardner-Johnson was someone who I thought Philly should have definitely held on to. So how much percentage, my original question to you, Leo, is are we putting this on Howie Roseman for the decisions he's made as far as, like I said, releasing versus keeping?
You know, we can poke fingers right now, but because when we saw what happened to that defense in particular, just being decimated by injuries, I don't think one guy would have mattered. You know, Howie, if they're healthy, and we saw what they can do when they were healthy the first 10 weeks, then all of a sudden the roof caved in with injuries. They were out of linebacker, but we knew they were going to have trouble at linebacker at the beginning of the year. That was the Achilles heel. But then it not only became the Achilles heel, it became a cancer that was spreading throughout the entire team because people figured out in a hurry where to attack the Eagle defense. You attack the linebackers. And that's, if you watch, and I asked Dave Canales this. I said, Coach, everybody talks about that Eagle rush not being there. What I'm seeing on film is teams are running rhythm routes and getting out of the ball's getting out of the quarterback's hands in a hurry. He said, yeah, that's what they're doing because they could get it to people. And I'm going to put my guy who's going against a third or fourth or fifth team linebacker. I'll do that all day and twice on Sunday. And that's what they were doing. Howie had the right mix in the beginning. But when we got to the end of the road, it wasn't the right mix. And you know what? That stuff happens. It just happens because the three things you can't control: weather, turnovers, and injuries. Can't control them.
Yeah. So, all right. I'm throwing names out there, and I need your opinion. Just let me know one way or the other. They staying or are they going? And I'm going to start with Sean Desai. Is he staying or is he going?
Going.
What about Matt Patricia?
Going. And everybody on that defensive staff has to fall on their sword. There's just, I'm sorry. That's, if I'm Jeffrey Lurie, I'm saying, what are you doing? Are you keeping any of these defensive guys? Because I don't think, and again, it's not their fault. You can't make chicken salad out of chicken soup. You know what I mean?
What about Brian Johnson?
I cleaned that up nicely for you.
Yeah, you did. What about Brian Johnson?
I think he's going to get demoted. I think you got to come in with somebody, because what I'm hearing now out of Philly from my guys, is that number one went rogue a lot. where the play came in, it wasn't run. Now, we had Jaworski on last Wednesday night, and his big complaint was that team gets in the shotgun way too much. Those RPOs need to get this guy under center because they limit the hits. And it worked for 10 games, but it worked for 10 games because they ran the football. All of a sudden, I don't know why they thought they had to throw the football, but they did. This was a run-first team for 11 games.
Yeah.
Then it became pass-happy. And I don't know if that was the quarterback. And I'll tell you what now, Eric, I think there's a lot of people that looked at that last little sequence when Dallas Goedert was kind of shouting out Jalen Hurts. And I think there's some real question marks in that huddle if this is the guy. And that's got me scared a little bit because Jalen just looked at him, didn't react, just looked at him. And for some reason, everything was going to 6. And you know what? The Bucs figured it out in a hurry. We're going to double team 6. But Jalen kept trying to force it in there. He needed to go. I mean, how many times do we sit back there and look at a guy running down the field, 10 yards, cutting over the middle, being wide open, and Jalen's throwing to the numbers? I don't get it. Plus, how can you not have a hot route and not sit there as a wide receiver and see that and not run a slant? Because they're coming. And they didn't even hide it. They're coming. And nobody's running a hot route. It was sad. It was painful to watch.
Oh, listen, I'm sitting up there again. I'm watching this whole thing, and I'm asking the question, Julio Jones went down with a concussion. Okay. We still had Olamide Zaccheaus. We still had Quez Watkins. You still had the run game. What was the point of emphasis of always throwing to Devontae Smith? Why? Because you didn't have A.J. Brown? You had Dallas Goedert, who got a couple catches there, but I'm looking at this the same way you and Eagle fans are looking at it. I'm saying to myself, these aren't scrubs. We got weapons. We've used these guys in the past. What is going on? So if it is the communication error of basically Jalen wanting to do what Jalen wants to do, well, then that's a problem. Okay, because no one man is bigger than the team. However, if there's a disconnect offensively, then as the head coach or as a leader in that locker room or on that offense, they need to figure that out. Because what I'm fearful of, leading up to my next thing, is the fact that, Leo, you and I possibly, potentially, we already know one domino has already fallen, okay? We know that was Jason Kelce's last game last night. Mm-hmm. And as the best center in the entire NFL and a first ballot Hall of Famer, I personally want to say thank you for 14 years of just your blood, sweat, and tears. You should never have to pay a bill in the city of Philadelphia ever again. But if he is done, what does that say about Lane Johnson? What does that say about Brandon Graham? What does that say about Fletcher Cox? You know what I mean? Because those 4 guys, if there was ever a group that held the team together and they had the heart, they had the stones each and every time they stepped on a field, be it Lincoln Financial or somewhere else, then this whole thing, as you have said earlier, is going to get blown up, not just off the field with coaching, but inside that locker room.
Yeah, and you know what, those guys, I got a feeling a lot of them would have retired last year, but they thought they could run it back. They thought they had the tools they had, and they did in the beginning of the year. They had it. But you know what? The football gods, they don't let you go too often. And you know what? They haven't figured out what's the important point in a team's schedule. Look at Buffalo. You know when they got their bye week? December. All of a sudden, here come the Bills rested. If you have a bye week, 3, 4, or 5, or 6, you're running double digits the rest of the way. That's not good.
Yeah.
That can't happen. You know, when you look at the Eagles last year, hey, late bye week. That's what you want. You want that late bye week so people can get rested. And that's a problem. So I just think there's going to be more shoes to fall other than Kelsey's. And God love him. He gave his heart and soul to this team and to this city, Philadelphia. And you're right. You know, him and Nick should never have to pay for a bar bill ever again in that city. And I'll tell you what, if you're an Eagles fan and all of a sudden Jason and Nick walk into a bar, you better buy them a drink, period. End of story.
Exactly. Well, we shall see what happens as the weeks progress. We're, a little over a month and a half away from free agency. But, I mean, as these shoes drop and as we see what the next wave is going to be for this team, I can only speculate as to who stays and who goes. But, Leo, I shudder to think what next year is going to be like, because this is a team constructed over the last 3 seasons at least. We looked like we had the tools to be a dominant force in the NFL. And if last night's performance was any indication of what the future holds, listen, I will always stand by our team, but I can't say that I'm going to sit there and be as on the mic as I typically am when it comes to the success of the Philadelphia Eagles. But we'll see what they've got. We'll see what happens when the draft happens in Detroit this year. But, man, and granted, we're talking less than 24 hours removed from the game. So the pain is still there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I'm concerned because, again, if Jason Kelsey retirement has Lane Johnson, Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, those 3 guys sitting there saying, thank you, Philadelphia, but it's my time to ride off. Man, our Jordan Mailata is going to be the guy on the offense to really step it up now. Cam Jurgen, I need to see more from that offensive line. And again, if changes are made to the coaching, first off, can we get a defensive guy? Look, if Mike Rabel don't want to be at Tennessee and we done took guys from Tennessee anyhow, why not bring their head coach over and say, hey, Mike, why don't you be our DC and teach these guys how to tackle? Because
that was deplorable. That was deplorable.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, Amped Up Sports editor and CEO, the one, the only Mr. Leo Haggerty joining me here tonight. Thank you so much, sir. Many blessings to you. Listen, this ain't the last time because we can still talk playoffs. We can still talk the draft.
Playoffs. Have you seen that commercial yet with him and oh my God, it's hysterical.
Oh yeah, him and Kevin Hart. Yes, I have seen it.
That's hysterical. Yeah,
that's hysterical. Yes.
Hey, it's always fun to be on with one of the hardest working journalists in the country.
I appreciate you, brother.
I enjoy our time, and I'm honored that you would bring me on.
Anytime,
brother. I'm here for it.
Anytime. The door is open. Hey, we will definitely talk soon, my brother. Stay blessed. I'll holler at you.
Take care.